What a week, y'all. I passed both my oral assessments for the Foreign Service. All right, the two tracks I'm on are Consular Fellow Program and also the IMS, Information Management Specialist. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen my previous video. It was, when was it, like August, I think, of 2021 when I published it. And it was about the three tests for Foreign Service, three of the tests that they give, and about some tips for passing all three of them, okay? So tons of updates since then, which is why I'm doing this video. I have no idea when I'm gonna actually publish it. I wanted to do it while it's fresh in my mind so that hopefully if you're in the process, you can get some advice as well. So let me talk about timelines, okay? There's a lot of information in this video. I might have to switch batteries. We'll see how it goes. June 9th is when I passed the FSOT. And remember, that's the one that's kind of the most popular. Like everybody, it's very competitive to be an FSO. And 18th of June is when I passed the CFPT, the Consular Fellows one. And remember, that's the limited non-career appointment. So that one is maximum of 5 years. But it's only for certain languages, Arabic, Mandarin, Portuguese, and Spanish, I think. And then 9th of August, and I don't know why I waited so long to take the IMST. I think it was just like, I was just curious. I was like, okay, why not? It looks interesting. So what are the next steps after you pass these initial exams? Well, your application goes to this panel called the QEP, Qualifications Evaluation Panel. I don't know how many people it is. I don't know much about it other than they convene to look at your application, including your mini essays, like personal narrative questions. And then they decide, like based on these answers, are you a good fit to go to the next level? And so, like I said, like the next steps, it says different things for all three of them. That's why I actually wanted to read it to you. So for the FSOT, as you know, the process is a series of evaluations that can lead to an offer of employment as an entry-level Foreign Service officer. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Once the QEP completes the review, you get an email to say whether you've been invited to the next step. You will receive this email in approximately 7 to 8 weeks. That didn't happen. Anyway, 7 to 8 weeks, remember that. That's a timeline for the FSO. And then for the, let me do this chronologically. So the CFPT, they said it would take 5 to 8 weeks from the time the panel convenes, okay? And it doesn't say when the panel is going to convene. But it does say the next step after that is if you pass that part, then they're going to ask you to do a language test. And you need a minimum proficiency level. I think for Arabic, it's a 2 in reading and a 1 in writing. No, a 2 in speaking and a 1 in reading, something like that. And for Spanish, I think it's a little bit more competitive. Like you need like a 3 or something. Don't quote me on that. Your test results. Well, okay, so, and then it says your test results are sent to the Consular Fellows Program unit on a quarterly basis. They will not receive your info immediately, so please be patient. Okay, got it. So with the Consular Fellows Program, what's going to happen is first, the QEP meets just as with the FSO. Then they decide, okay, we want to test you for the language. And then if you pass that, then they're going to send a quarterly email saying, okay, you're invited to the next step, which is to schedule the oral assessment. All right, and then finally for the IMS, it said that it would take, how long does it take? Several months. It just says several months. It can take several months since test results are delivered in a cyclical rotation to the Department of State. Those who prove most competitive will be asked by email to submit documentation demonstrating educational achievements and veterans preference documents, which basically means your transcript. So if you pass, if they decide that you're worthy based on your essays, these 1,300 word things in your application, then they're going to ask you to send your transcript. And then from there, they're going to, I guess, look over your transcript, and then they invite you to the oral assessment. Exactly a month after I passed the IMST is when I first heard anything. And it was for the Consular Fellows Program, which I had taken their test in June, right? So September 10th, I got an email saying I passed the QEP for the Consular Fellows and that they'd be testing my Arabic next. So that's 12 weeks after I took the Consular Fellows Program test, just so you know. So it's about 3 months. It was for me. I took my Arabic test the following week, and I passed. And on the 24th, they send you I guess that was when I took my second Arabic test, and it said I passed. And that same day is when I finally heard back from the FSO regarding my QEP, and they said I didn't pass it. I didn't make it to the next level, which is interesting because my essays that I wrote, like it was basically the same that I did for consular fellows. I guess because consular fellow is less competitive, that's why I guess it went through for consular fellows and not for foreign service. I don't know. I've heard people apply like multiple times to get an oral assessment for FSO. But I really wasn't that bummed out about it because I was already in the middle of the process for consular fellow program. So timeline-wise, remember, that was 15 weeks later. So it's like almost 4 months later that I heard about the FSO. The next thing I heard from anybody was October 1st, and that's when I heard from the IMS team saying that I passed the QEP part, and they requested my transcript. So I sent my transcript like right away. They sent me an email confirming they received it on about 2 weeks later. So from IMS, the time from you take the test to when you hear anything, for me, or I guess, yeah, for me it was 8 weeks. It was almost 8 weeks, all right? Next in the timeline, Pearson, which is I guess the testing company that coordinates your application process, they emailed me on the October 29th about scheduling the oral assessments for both the consular fellow program and the IMS. I mean, they were separate emails, but they were inviting me to schedule my assessment. So just to give you some timeline, that's 19 weeks after I took the consular fellow program test, and it's 12 weeks after I took the IMST, all right? And they said in the email scheduling was opening on November 1st, and you have until the 5th to sign up. And the first date I think you could sign up for was like in the beginning of January, and through March is when they were going to do these. So my thought process here was, look, I only want to go to DC once. Like I'd rather just get 2 birds with 1 stone. I don't want to have to fly back for you know what I mean? Because you're also doing this on your own dime. So I made sure to wait until midnight, like when it would just open. I waited until 11 p.m. on October 31st. And I tried to schedule it, but it still wasn't open. So I guess they used Central Time, or I don't even know. But so I had to wait till midnight, and it was November 1st, and then I was able to schedule one. So I had like 2 windows open, one for the IMS part and one for the consular fellow part. And I'm like trying to get 2 appointments as close as possible to each other. And remember, these are like 4-hour block appointments, right? So you're supposed to do the case management and the structured interview. And so the best I could do was I got a 7 a.m. appointment on a Thursday for the IMS orals and like 11 a.m. on a Friday for the consular fellow program, all right? And so I thought, okay, this is great. I've got this all scheduled, and then I'll start worrying about studying and all this stuff. I'll worry about that in December. The next thing that happened was in December, I started getting emails from like an outreach specialist with State Department about info sessions, like these virtual info sessions for the Foreign Service oral assessments. And these are done on this software called WebEx by Cisco. It's like Zoom. It's like Cisco's version of Zoom. They have them on like the 2nd Saturday every month or something. And so you can go to this info session and ask any questions you have, and you know, they'll kind of go through the interview process and the case management exercise, and they have little videos of other candidates doing it. I mean, they're like staged, like they're not going to actually film you while you're doing an interview. And it was really helpful, I thought. So I went to one in December and then one in January, right the week before my orals. I mean, it's pretty much the same content, but they don't record it. Like they can't record the session for you to watch later. So that's another thing too, is like try to make yourself available on a Saturday morning. I think they were like 11 a.m. Eastern or something like that. Another thing, the recruitment specialist will attach the oral assessment guide to his email. A note on the information guide for the oral assessments, the one for the FSS, Foreign Service Specialist, so like Office Management Specialist or Information Management Specialist, it's like 17 pages, whereas for Consular Fellow Program, it's 8 pages. And then for the FSO, it's like 60 pages, 61 pages. So some light reading for you. Next, here's what happened, and this is kind of, ugh. All right, so by the end of December, I had attended one of the info sessions. I'd already booked my flight to DC, I booked my accommodation. I was like gearing up to go, right? Suddenly, it was Thursday, December 30th, when I get an email saying that let's see what it says. The Board of Examiners Assessment Center will temporarily suspend all in-person oral assessments from January 3rd to 17th, which covered mine because of COVID, right? So I was so bummed. And then I think like an hour or two later, I got one about the IMS being rescheduled too. And basically what it says is like, don't contact us, we'll contact you. We're gonna keep you updated, no further action is needed. And so I'm just like, great, this is like perfect, it's gonna take forever. I canceled my flight. They did give me a credit back for the flight. I think I have like a year to use that. And then I got like 50% of my Airbnb reservation back. I should have booked something that was a full refund, but whatever. All right, then after New Year's, I think the Monday right after New Year's, I had some good news. We share your disappointment. We've had to cancel your in-person assessment. We would like to offer you the opportunity to take them virtually. And I was just like, this is amazing, right? Like, I'd love to do that. They give you 2 business days to respond to an email scheduling the time. All right, and so I responded right back. And the way they do it is like, you'll do the case management one day, and then the next business day, you'll do the structured interview. So they do it over 2 days. All right, so I like rushed to like book what I wanted to do, and then she confirmed it, and then I said, just to double check, is this for the Consular Fellow program or for the IMS? And she's like, oh, it's Consular Fellows. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And then I didn't know how they were gonna do it with the IMS, and then like the very next day, I got an email saying, we have an opening for the IMS interview on Friday and Monday. So it was going to be even before my Consular Fellow interview. And there weren't any really choices. It just says like this time and this time. And I'm like, okay, like sure, that's fine. It worked for me. It was 8 a.m. my time, which was perfect because that way I could like finish and like get into my work day and everything. So, and it's much better than 7 a.m. Eastern. I mean, if I had to go to DC and do it in person, I would have had to wake up at like by 6 a.m. Eastern, which in Houston is 5 a.m. Yeah, so it's just like, it would have been awful. All right, so here's what happens next in the process. The day before my first virtual assessment for the IMS, somebody from the team, the assessment team, they emailed me a document with 7 attachments. 6 of them you have to sign and send back. One of them is like the 12 dimensions for the Foreign Service. These are things like if you're studying for it, you probably would know or have access to already. After sending the documents, she sent me the link to join the WebEx meeting the next morning for my case management, right? And so, as you know, you do it virtually. So like you hold up your ID to the camera. You also like pan around so they see you're not with anybody. And then they give you then you start and they turn off their camera and mic and they're basically watching you as you do the test. And let me go through what the case management part of it is. This is from the oral assessment guide that they publish. They score a bunch of dimensions and they give you a scenario describing issues which may typically arise within your specialty in a foreign service context. You have 45 minutes to read several realistic problems, analyze them, develop recommendations, and then write a logical and clear 1 to 2 page memo summarizing the situation and providing solutions to the problems identified. You don't need to know government or State Department rules and regulations, just rely on your own knowledge and experience. The timing is deliberately tight, as the written communication dimension measures, among other things, how well a candidate writes under time pressure. You use a computer and you don't use Microsoft Word. You use like their own thing, and there's a limited number of characters. So what I will say about that is I don't think there was a time crunch. 45 minutes is more than enough time. And number 2, regarding the format, I didn't use a memo format. Why would you? I mean, you have a limited number of characters. Like, have you seen what a memo looks like? I don't think I've ever written a memo, like to, from, date, subject. No, just start, like just write as if you're like a narrative, like well, I did a paragraph for each thing, but like, you don't need to put a whole like greeting, like, and you don't have to do a whole memo format. At least I didn't, and I passed. So, because you do want to also, you remember that you have a character limit. So you don't want to be wasting it on random stuff. You want to get into the meat of your response, all right? What was I gonna say? Okay, this is the IMS case management, okay. Yeah, so like I said, I did it, and I wrote it as if I was like responding to an email, but I didn't put a greeting in there, you know? Like I didn't even do like an intro paragraph and an ending paragraph. I didn't even, like, it's not a 5-paragraph essay either, you know? Like you can start with sentence being like, you know, thank you or whatever, however you want to start it, but like get into how you're gonna solve the things. And so like the answer or the sample that they gave When you arrive at your new post, your supervisor asks for recommendations for how to address a number of current problems in your section. Here are 3 main problems. And then there's like 3 different things, and then you write a 1 to 2 page memo, single space. Again, I didn't use memo format, but like I answered all 3 of them. And try to put as much detail as you can, and yeah, just be logical. And there's no spell check or whatever. Yeah, just do your best. That one, as I said, I finished it before the time was up, which was great. You click finish, your proctor's like, okay, great. That's it for today. You should get a link for tomorrow's meeting. Right, so the next business day, it was a Monday, and I was supposed to have my structured interview for the IMS. Well, I had never gotten the WebEx link. So I was kind of freaking out because I was like emailing and she wasn't responding. 30 minutes later, 30 minutes after I was supposed to start, like 8:30 a.m. my time, I got a call from the facilitator being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I just sent you the link now. And I'm like, thank you. Did you tell the interviewers that I was going to be late? She's like, yeah, they know the situation. So like, okay, great. So it was fine. Like, but it was a little bit nerve-wracking because I didn't have the link to join it. Now let's talk about the structured interview for the IMS. And it's just like the one for the Consular Fellow program. So I'll kind of try to give it in detail here first. As you can see in the study guide, there are 3 sections. First, experience and motivation. Second, hypothetical scenarios. And third, past behavior. My best advice for the experience and motivation is it's like you prep like you would for any job interview. So if you were doing a lot of job interviews, and I know I was, so I kind of had practice answering these kinds of common questions. You know, just Google like, yeah, job interview questions. And I also have an Excel, like a sheet that I use, a Google sheet. And then it's got like 150 questions or something. And then I would kind of go through, not every single one, but like I would put, okay, here's what I would say for this and give an example of this. Just so you have some ideas in your mind, you know, take that walk down memory lane. If you guys want to see the sheet that I use, if you want to download your own copy, I could put a link to it. Just put a comment down below if you're interested. And if I get like 10 comments, then I'll post it. But yeah, it was just like a Google sheet of like possible questions. They could ask you about each of the dimensions, all right? From the guide, the structured interview, here's what else it says. 60 minutes total. I think it went a little bit over 60 minutes, but yeah, experience and motivation. Candidates should convey to the examiners a clear and precise picture of themselves, including their understanding of the Foreign Service. They will consider your expressed motivation to join the Foreign Service, education and work experience, and cross-cultural skills. It is helpful to have previously informed yourself about the Foreign Service in general and also about the work related to the specialty you've selected. So, I mean, that's kind of common. Like, you should do that for any job interview you have, is like research the company and be prepared, okay? The second part is the hypotheticals. And for these, I would say just be yourself. In a hypothetical situation, what would you do? And for this one, they're not allowed to give you any extra information, but you can say, okay, assuming X, I would do Y. And there were a couple situations where I said, assuming X, I do Y, but assuming A, I would do B. So I'm kind of like, if I interpret it this way, here's what I would do. If I interpret it that way, that's what I would do. So just try to be thorough, but be yourself, like I said. Just what would you do in the situation? And then the last thing is past behavior. And for past behavior, this is another area where I thought that the info session was very valuable. They ask the candidate a series of questions to which you respond with examples from your own experience. They're going to give you 5 different dimensions, and then they're going to tell you the definitions for all 5. And for each of those 5, they're going to give you 2 questions, and you choose one of the 2. You get to choose which one to answer. And I think you have like 5 minutes to select the question you wish to discuss for each dimension and to prepare your response. Your example should be appropriate and drawn from your own experience. And then, yeah, so it's like, and they can repeat the question, but I think that'll take out from the 90 seconds you have to like think. Wait, is it? No, so they read both of them. And then I think you have 5 minutes to decide. And then at the end, time's up, you say which one you wanted to answer, and then they repeat the one that you're going to answer, and then you answer it. It's kind of like that. So that one, like I said, like preparing in advance and just kind of going through memory lane and having some examples of different situations can be really helpful for that one. And also the info session, the guy who led the info session, he said another thing that was very helpful, like the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. So be sure to just be thorough and like what's the situation, what was the task, here's what you did, and then here's what that resulted in. So don't just say what you did, but say what was the outcome or the result. One last thing, after the past behavior part, that's the third section, you're all done with the interview. Before they take the time to convene and review your answers, they're gonna ask you one more question, which is not in the guide. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but basically, at the end of any interview, what's the last question they usually ask you? I mean, you can kind of figure that out for yourself. But you're allowed to, it's optional, you can answer or choose not to answer it. And then after that, they they took a 30-minute break for my IMS. I think they're supposed to do an hour, but they did a 30-minute break for the IMS, maybe because I started late. And then they said, okay, at this time exactly, we're gonna get back on the call. So you turn off the you turn off the video and the audio, and you come back in 30 minutes to the call. So don't disconnect the call, or if you do, just use the link and rejoin. All right, 30 minutes later, we get back on the call. Oh, I should have said this before, but it's two people, right? So one of them is a subject matter expert. So one of them was a woman who had been in the IMS position before, all right? And the other person was maybe just, I don't know, a talent. I don't even know what their role was, I don't remember. Anyway, so the two people who were in the room before, they say hi, whatever, and then he looked down and he's like, thank you for taking the time to interview with us. Appreciate your effort going through the process. And he's kind of like, I'm like, his tone, I was starting to get a little nervous. And he says, given blah, blah, and I would like to say, he paused and he's like, congratulations. And I was like, and they love to see your reaction too. I was like, congratulations, you passed with this. And I'm just like, and they told me that I got a 5.6. You need a 5.25 to pass. And they look at your test score plus your essays and your experience and then your interview, and they combine all those and then they give you a score. So I had a 5.6, but he told me that if you have veterans points or language points, that can bring it higher. And I was kind of happy about that because I had already taken the Arabic test for the Foreign Service for the Consular Fellow program. And so I don't know if I'm allowed to use that one, TBD, I'll let you guys know. But since I passed the Arabic test, that should also add some points to my score. I was just so relieved and so happy that I passed because that's the one I feel like my test scores are probably not that great. That was it for the IMS, and I didn't get a confirmation email that day or anything. It took 3 days for them to get back to me saying congratulations and give me a bunch of documents, okay? So that was the IMS process. Now let's go to the Consular Fellow program. I'm probably gonna change the battery on my camera. Hopefully we should be good for the rest of this. I'm trying to be very thorough and relive my experience so you get the best possible. So as I mentioned, the IMS, I was super happy to have passed, and I'll get more into the details about the register and stuff later. Let's talk about the Consular Fellows program structured interview and case management exercise. So a few days later, I heard from a different facilitator about the CF program, and she sent me more documents, actually the same documents pretty much, almost the same documents that I signed before my other oral assessment, and sent them back to her. She sent me a WebEx link. So I was supposed to join the meeting, join a meeting early, an hour before my test was about to start. So that way they know if there's any technical difficulty, right? That was all good. And then I came back an hour later and I started my test. It was on, I think it was on a Wednesday, at 12 p.m. my time, so it was good. And again, you show your driver license, and this facilitator, she was funny. She's like, oh, I got family in Texas. I was like, oh, thank you. The case management exercise for Consular Fellow program, honestly, it was the same format as for the IMS. It's the same type of thing, and for this one, again, it's another, look in the oral assessment guide, but it's pretty much the same. It's just a different scenario. The example they give is when you arrive at your new post, your supervisor asks for opinions and recommendations for how to address a number of current problems because you have a fresh perspective. Here are the 3 main problems they want you to address. A, B, 1, 2, and 3. And then it says, your supervisor wants you to draft a plan of action, 1 to 2 pages long, single space, outlining your recommendations to address each problem. You should use a normal paragraph narrative format, but you may include some ticks and bullets. What's called a normal paragraph narrative format. That's what I used. I didn't do a 5-paragraph essay. I did have 1 paragraph for each thing, but I don't remember if I did I didn't do an intro or conclusion, not really. And I passed this one with a 6.1, so. And for this one, I think I finished with about 10 minutes or so to spare, between 10 and 12 minutes to spare. And when the facilitator turned the camera back on, she's like, do you have any questions for me? I'm going to give you another link for tomorrow's interview, blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, no, I have no questions, good. And she goes, and on a related note, or she said, oh, and another topic, you look like one of the Judd sisters. And I was like, thank you. Like, I didn't have any makeup on, so I was super flattered. She's like, yeah, did you see like that movie Kiss the Girl? And I was like, no, but I'll have to like, but thank you. Like, that's very nice. That's a very nice compliment, but yeah. Anyway, so the next day, Thursday, is when I had my structured interview. That one went well also. Interestingly, the past behavior questions they asked me, where you have the two choices, which one you want to answer in this, they were the exact same questions that I had earlier that week for the Consular Fellow Program orals. So that kind of made it nice because I was like, like I kind of knew what I wanted to say for that section, which was cool. So if you're taking 2 orals around the same time, maybe you'll have the same luck. Oh, another thing too, instead of 2 people, this one had 3 people in the room. Because one of them was just observing, I guess. Maybe he was training or what. But so one guy, he didn't say anything. He wasn't talking. Very like deer in the headlights. Like, okay, here's another thing. Don't be freaked out and anxious and nervous. Try to be yourself. It's okay to be friendly and congenial. That's another piece of advice I would give. Because it's like if you have like a deer in the headlights look, like not even showing any emotion, it's kind of weird. And I know they'll tell you, oh, the interviewers are not supposed to show any emotion or whatever. You can see a little bit come out sometimes, like nobody's a robot. So I had a couple of embarrassing, in my past, like I had some things or that were maybe what they thought were funny or whatever, but like they were kind of like, they weren't, like they would smile to me, okay, and I would smile back. So it's okay to be congenial and nice. The facilitator, the third person in the room, the guy who wasn't saying anything, like he was very like, no emotion. But the other 2 were more like, I mean, they were professional and formal, but like they had a little bit more like not say personality, but they would smile back at me, okay? And I think this is more the IMS orals, but I asked her to, so you can ask them to repeat a question if you want, especially with the situation, the hypotheticals. Some of the questions are kind of long enough, and when I'm like, still like thinking about the previous question, if I answered it correctly, like my mind has to like refocus. And so I would ask them to repeat part of a question or a whole question. And I was like, thank you. And they said, you're welcome. Like, so yeah, like if you ask them to repeat a question, just be gracious because they're like having to read this stuff all day. And like, I always feel bad asking them to repeat a question because it's like a whole paragraph. For the Consular Fellow orals, when I finished, they took a whole hour to review. They said, come back at X time, turn off your camera and mic. And if the call gets disconnected, you can just join again. So that's what actually I did get disconnected during that hour. And I just like reconnected right before. They welcome you back into the room, the virtual room, and all 3 of them are there again. And this time he kind of like, so yeah, he kind of looks down just like as with before. He's, because he has to read from a script, like, all right, thank you for taking the time to do this. I'd like to thank you, blah, blah, and congratulations. And I was like, again, congratulations, you passed this portion. Your score was out of 7. You got a 6.1 is what they told me. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, they don't show you where you are in the bell curve or anything. But you need a 5.25 to pass and to get on the register. So I thought a 6.1, okay, that's pretty cool. And you can get a higher score with veteran points, but it doesn't apply to me. And it's for Arabic already, so I can't get more points for Arabic because it's the Consular Fellows program for Arabic. So, all right, so that was Thursday afternoon. I was just so relieved and so happy that I passed both orals and it didn't have to go to DC for them. It was worth the money that I lost on the Airbnb, like, I'm done. Like it felt so good to not have to, like, just to be able to do it from home and not have to travel, but also to have passed. It'd be awful. I mean, to fail in any situation, but to have to fly there and do it and then find out you failed. I mean, that would be awful. So super grateful that I passed both of them. And then on Thursday afternoon is when I heard from the facilitator for the IMS, and she sent me an email saying congratulations, and it had like a bunch of attachments. Congratulations on passing your virtual FSOA. Attached is your conditional offer of employment as well as other documents and information. Somebody from diplomatic security will contact you in the coming days to go over next steps regarding your security clearance. On Friday, I got an email from my Consular Fellows facilitator saying something similar with a combined PDF of all the documents. And so the documents in that email are just like, there's like an offer letter, a conditional offer letter, basically saying like, here's what score you got. You have to do the medical clearance and the security clearance, and then pass a suitability review, which I guess is after the security clearance and the medical clearance. They kind of look at overall everything. They say, okay, you're good to go. And then you get put on a register, and you're ranked by your score. You're on that register for 18 months, except for Consular Fellow, they told me I'd be on it for 24 months. That's what they said. I don't know, I thought it was 18 months, but they said it was 24 months. But yeah, I'm super relieved to have this all done, especially the interviews I was really anxious about because I'm an introvert. But before we go, so one question I saw on Discord, somebody said, can you be on multiple registers at one time? The answer is yes, you can. And they tell you that after the interview. They asked me in both, when they told me my score and stuff and told me that I passed, they asked me if I'm on any other tracks. I said yes. And they said, okay, you can be on 2 registers at once or multiple registers, but if you accept an offer for one, then the other ones get terminated, okay? Except if you're a Consular Fellow and you accept an offer and you're also on a track for like IMS or FSO or any other track, you can defer it for 24 months. So sorry if it's getting like confusing, but because Consular Fellow is only for 5 years, it doesn't look as stable. And for me too, like I want something that's like, I have the option to be in longer than 5 years or until retirement. And so the IMS seems more stable to me. If I am on the Consular Fellow register and the IMS register, they're saying I can take a job as a Consular Fellow and stay on the other registers because the Consular Fellow is only for 5 years. If I get an offer from one of the other registers, I can defer it for up to 24 months. So that's what they say. Because like I said, the Consular Fellow is just a short-term thing. Yeah, there's so much more to say on all this. I'm still reading through all the information. Like they give you a website to look through the guide, like after you pass the orals. There's like a 70-page information guide. And I was just like, Friday night, I'm like sitting like with my celebratory drink and my like iPad, like going through. I'm like, what? Like you get your housing paid for, like in your post or whatever, you get like housing paid for, and then like you go to DC first for training, they pay for you to move everything. They pay your housing, you get like a meal per diem, great insurance, and so many benefits. I was like, oh wow. I mean, I was busting my butt in Dubai, right? Like when I was learning Arabic, I'd work like a full day and then do promo modeling jobs at night to make extra money to pay for my Arabic classes and all this stuff. Whereas like with Foreign Service, they pay you to take classes. Like you go to the Foreign Service Institute in Arlington and they put you up, they give you food allowances, all this. They have a shuttle from your lodging to the training center. I mean, you can also bring your car or whatever, and they'll ship your car abroad. That's another thing, and your furniture and all your stuff. But like, you get paid, I don't know how many months the training is, it depends on your post, but you'll get like language and skills training and all this other stuff. You get paid to do classes. And I'm like, what? Like, and I always told myself, like, I don't know if I would ever move abroad again, like given that my first few months in Dubai were so hard before I got my first job. But I mean, with Foreign Service, I'm like, oh my God, like they really, like I would feel really spoiled, like compared to what I dealt with in Dubai. So that got me like really excited. I think I want to do the IMS, but I'd be happy either way. Like I feel like it would be a great experience. All right guys, so that's it for today. Hopefully you found this interesting, thorough, hopefully not too thorough. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below and questions. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.